Hey guys, welcome back to Online Chapel. Super glad to be here today with Daniel Knott, who is our new athletic chaplain at CBU, but also a really good friend of mine.
Yeah.
It's really cool just our paths crossing again. We used to be at the same church back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I think back when I was in college or shortly after that. So it's cool just, obviously knowing you from that, but then seeing you come to CBU and yeah, like tell us a little bit about kind of what you do and your job as athletic chaplain here.
Yeah. So I have a really cool role. I think that's like when most people hear about what I do, like, all right, what is that? And I explain
Yeah.
it to them, and they're like, that's an awesome job. Like, it is. So I work within the spiritual life office. We do evangelism, discipleship, and mobilization of students. So you'll see us around campus, leading discipleship groups, training students to be disciples and walk closer with Jesus. And so my job is specifically to kind of work that within the confines of like the student athletics. So it's being a student athlete here is like just challenging with like the schedule and with the timing.
Yeah.
Like when we're doing discipleship groups or we have things going on, there a lot of times they're just like on the road or trying to find time in their schedule between like practice and lifts. And so I'm really here to try to help continue like the role of what spiritual life does, but kind of within the confines of like how it works within the athletic department. So you'll see me walking around talking with the student athletes, and it's kind of the same goal:
Yeah.
evangelism, discipleship, getting them thinking about missions and
Yeah.
what the ministry of the kingdom is. So
That's dope, man.
yeah,
That's dope. Well, I know we've been praying for just like a role like this on our campus.
yeah,
I think it's been a felt need for a while, and so it's cool to obviously have someone in that role, but you specifically. I know you're here to help support our athletes, but if you guys get to know Daniel, like he's very accessible, like just very personable. I know you've kind of already gotten to know like a lot of students. It's not just athletes, but that's just been really cool to see. Tell me a little bit just about like what were you doing before getting here to CBU? I know you're also pastoring a church,
yeah.
right? So maybe if you can tell us just a little bit about your background, kind of what you were doing before you got to CBU
Sure.
vocationally.
Yeah, I taught in Christian education, like K through 12, for like 17 years. I was at a middle school in El Monte that was like maybe 50, 60 kids. And so I taught like every subject. It was like math,
You were the one.
science. Like if I knew a little bit about anything, it became a subject that I would teach. It was like
Yeah.
in my one semester of Greek, it was like, all right, you can do a Greek class. I'm just like teach them the Greek alphabet.
Yeah.
And then I taught at a school in Claremont for 10 years, but that was all Bible. So
Got it.
was teaching Bible. And then about 4 years ago, got the call to plant a church. I was actually going to your father-in-law's church and just shared with him that I was thinking about like planting, and I love him so much. It was like, yes, that sounds great. And he like pushed me out the door, and I was like, I don't know if I'm completely ready yet, but
Yeah.
so for the last about 3.5 years, we've been in the church planting space. Again, it's the evangelism, discipleship, mobilization. How do we get people from starting off their Christian journey to being a disciple who's actually making disciples? So
Man.
yeah,
Yeah. Dude, that's so awesome. I think, yeah, like the fact that you're here, you're here to help support like a lot of our student athletes. You are also a student athlete
Yeah.
yourself, correct? Can
Yeah.
you share with me just like a little bit? Just want to know like what was
Yeah.
what was college, Daniel, like, what were you up to?
So like right out of high school, I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great school, super prestigious. Like being a student athlete there is tough, just like anywhere. But there's like also like other unique responsibilities that you have. I think every student has like between a 20 and a 22 hour semester load of classes, so
Oh
that's
my
like
gosh.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, especially like your freshman year, you have all of this. They call it professional knowledge of stuff that you just have to memorize, like weapons on a ship, or we had to like memorize the menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And at any point, an upperclassman can be like, "What's the lunch menu?" And you have to like stand at attention and just like shout it out. It's crazy.
Dang.
So being a student athlete there was unique, but just like the rigors, but then also like the camaraderie. Guys who I went to the academy with are like still some of my best friends. And so when you have those like tight relationships, you start to see the value of like what it means to be like on a team and like really starting to care about people. And so my student athlete experience was really just like the relationship building, but also understanding like what it looks like to really be in like a pressurized environment and how it can be like a benefit or it can be a distraction. And so if you have the right view, the right understanding of like, I'm more than just whatever sport that I play, it can be a great thing. But if you're just like so locked in and this is what I do and this is what I'm about, it can kind of detract from the rest of who you are. And I would say for myself, it was probably more of a detraction at the time than it was actually like a tool that I was using to be like a better person holistically.
Yeah.
So I would say college Daniel was very distracted. If you talk to any of my boys from the academy or even when I transferred to Berkeley, it probably seemed like I was just kind of scatterbrained and all over the place.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have any real grounding until I started to like take my walk with Christ more seriously.
So you mentioned you transferred to Berkeley after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when was that? Did you play at Berkeley or was that an, athletic decision? You know what I mean? Like I'm not a student athlete. I never was. So let the record state that. So I don't know always how to talk about this, but was that like for athletics that you transferred or?
So there was just so much going on my sophomore year. Like I said, I was all over the place.
Yeah.
Like basketball was starting off really strong. Felt like I was really going to start to come into my own like as a sophomore.
Yeah.
I had like a really bad sprained ankle. That was a setback. There were some relationship things that happened that were a setback. And I got into this mindset of like, I just don't want to be here anymore. And I like withdrew from the Naval Academy. And as I was going through that process, my dad's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I think I might just move back home for a while. And while my dad was like he loves me and I know he would take me back, he was just kind of like, you're really going to leave the Naval Academy to come home and not do anything? And so it really was like a grace from God to like get into Cal. I had applied there and got in out of high school, but just the Lord opened the door, ended up getting into school. And even though I wanted to try to walk on there, like I just came off that ankle injury. I was not in the best of shape and just was not in the zone to play. So I ended up just like living with the guys on the team, working out with them during breaks.
That's dope.
But it just wasn't a part of the second half of my college journey.
For sure. What for you, like when you reflect back on your life, like what were like the more formative moments where you really felt like, okay, this, this faith, and wanting to follow Jesus, like that desire really like became yours. If you can pinpoint it, I don't know if you can. But.
There were so many like seminal moments.
Yeah.
I would say like probably the first one that like really, really grabbed my attention. I was driving home from the Bay. I think we were like on the 99 or the 5 freeway. Me and 3 buddies of mine were on the freeway and like the tire blows on the car. And what you would think would be just like a normal blown tire, the car starts like spinning.
Oh, dang.
And then it like spins off the side of the road and like rolls down into an embankment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And as the car's flipping over, like I legit feel like, oh, I'm gonna
This
die.
is it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like literally feel the car like crushing down like with every roll. I have my hand up to like try to stop the impact, and like I feel my hand just like broken bone in my hand. I was like, oh, that's broken.
Dang.
And all 4 of us walked away from the accident. Like I had a broken hand, my buddy had a scar in his eye, but the 4 of us, you looked at the car, it was wheels up. You would think like nobody walked away from that, and all 4 of us did.
Wow. And
it was like at that moment, I was like, I need to take life a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
Like I'm not invincible. There's a expiration date on my life, and I need to start thinking about what I'm doing and finding a little bit more of that clarity that I was missing earlier.
Yeah. Dang. That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Were there any I think just like voices in your life that really were able to kind of speak into your life and help you kind of like, I don't know, I just think we have people in our lives that maybe come in and out during different seasons, but serve a unique purpose of kind of setting us on a different course, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm wondering, has there been anybody kind of in your life that's kind of served that, you know, maybe multiple people, but maybe thinking of, you know, one or two people?
Man, I'd probably say my wife, Christina.
Hmm.
It was actually, I was actually on the road to go meet her because we had like met when I was in Southern California,
Okay.
like hanging out with my boys. We were like, some places we probably shouldn't have
Yeah,
been,
yeah, yeah,
but,
for sure, for sure.
but I meet this girl, and then my buddy's like, "Where we're gonna drive down?" I was like, "Well, I can shoot down there and see you
Yeah.
again." And
Yeah, I'll
like,
come along, you know.
yeah, and like just after the accident, like I had like, it was a weird like clarity with also a weird lack of clarity.
Mm.
But one of the things that became like super clear was that Christina was the woman I was supposed to marry.
Mm.
So like, it was a super fast process. We got married really young. I was still in school.
Mm.
Like, so we met in August. I proposed to her in December of that same year.
Oh, dang.
And then we were married in March of,
Ring by spring, yeah.
yeah, dude, it was crazy. And so like, I'll never be the hypocrite who said like, don't get married in college. But I would say definitely take your time, pray, seek the Lord on that.
For sure.
It was a blessing for me, but it might not be the case for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But she has been just an amazing grace from God.
Hmm.
It was really like in marriage where God started to expose like so much of my brokenness, so much of like the horrendous nature of my sin, my selfishness, my pride. But it was like in the depths of the brokenness that like the scripture started to come alive about like the grace of God.
Yeah.
And so I would say like one of the verses that like guides how I do life and how I do ministry is Romans 5:8. Like God demonstrated his love for us while we were yet sinners. Christ died for us. And it's like, I knew how awful a sinner I was because of how awful a husband and person I was to her. And like her grace to stay and God's grace to say, yeah, those were all of the things that I died for. And me kind of having the realization really for the first time of like, man, Jesus, I can't be any worse than this.
Yeah.
And this is the space that he died for me in. And it was just like, it was life changing.
Yeah.
And like, there's some times where you have these verses that you've read over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And then God just speaks to you through that verse in a moment. I would say that was like life altering.
Yeah, man. I think like that's so interesting you share that verse. Because I imagine being an athlete, you know, and you mentioned this kind of earlier in our conversation about, you know, how identity is like wrapped up in that, right? It's hard to separate yourself from that and kind of see like who you are in the eyes of God, right? Because I think as an athlete, you know, you probably really struggle with this idea of like performance, right? Because it's so performance based. You know, you're rewarded for your performance, right? And that can be a good thing, but I think when we attach that to like our identity and who we are, then it's like this, oh, I have to perform to be seen as like valuable, right? And so like, and the verse you shared, I think is a really cool way of God saying, hey, it's not about performance. Because when you were at your worst, that's when I died for you, right? So I'm curious, like, what have been some ways that God's worked in you to kind of like maybe separate your identity from some of that, like kind of like the performance trap, you know, like, because I imagine that's still probably a struggle. Like it is for me too. Like this idea that I have to perform, I have to, you know, I have to do the right thing to please God, and you know, I think that can slowly become a trap where we're thinking, oh, I've got to do this because if I do it this way, then God's going to love me more or whatever, you know? So I think like, what are some things that have kind of helped you like kind of recenter yourself, you know, and kind of combat against that like performance trap?
You know, there's like a variety of different things that I think, you know, resonate in that space of like understanding like Christ's love is unconditional. I would say like a big part of like me finding my value not in my performances was like with the birth of my kids.
Mm.
And that it may not sound like it's connected, but like when I look at my girls, I'd have no like expectation that their love is contingent on something that they would do or provide for me.
Yeah.
Like the second that they were born, they could not contribute anything.
Yeah. No.
Like they're eating, they're pooping, and they're sleeping.
Yeah.
And I would literally lay down my life for them. And to understand, like, there's nothing that they can do to earn my affection. It takes me to that space of understanding the same is true for us and God.
Wow.
Like, I'm not in a position to impress him, to earn anything, to say a word that's going to make Jesus go, wow, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And as a pastor and as a person in ministry, we want to have those moments where people are like, yeah, right on, you said it. And like, are we ever going to impress God? Is there anything that we're ever going to do that's going to make Jesus stand and applaud us? And to never feel like I'm earning, a space with him.
Yeah.
Is just incredibly freeing. And in the highest of moments, I know that it's his grace. In the lowest of moments, I know that it's his grace. And so I look at my daughters, and like the analogy or the picture of God being our Father is just such a beautiful one. And I'm nowhere near the Father that our Heavenly Father is.
Yeah.
And I know if I love my girls like this and the Father's love is infinitely greater, it's so freeing.
Yeah. Jesus says, hey, you who know how to give good gifts to your kids, like,
Even though
right?
you're
Like
evil.
how much even more, yeah, you who are evil, right? Like how much more, will the Father provide? And, that's a great point, man. What kind of encouragement would you give to students that maybe are, cause I think it's more common, than we think. Like, I think the majority of us, myself, I'm including myself in this group, we have this tendency to like kind of act like, yeah, I'm good, I've got it all together, I'm following Jesus, and in our mind we're kind of chasing this perfection, but maybe we're dealing with like habitual sin or like something that like makes us feel like, man, am I really who I say I am, and am I really a Christian? Am I really following God? Because I still struggle with these things. And I think a lot of times we're scared to be honest about that. And I think there's always grace for that. But I'm just curious, like, what advice would you give students that are maybe kind of like maybe chasing perfection, or kind of just trying to like just hold it together and kind of seem like, yeah, everything's okay on the surface, but maybe are kind of struggling still with that like kind of performance aspect?
Yeah, I would just encourage students, like, embrace conviction and avoid condemnation. Like the conviction of the Holy Spirit to draw us into closer relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
That really was a grace that actually helped me overcome and break sin patterns in my life.
Dude.
It was recognizing, like, hey, when I sin and I stumble and I fall short, rather than, walking away from God with my tail between my legs, that's an invitation to actually draw nearer to him. And it was, again, finding the depths of his love, understanding like how much he truly loves me. It gave me like a level of confidence to continue on the walk with him. Even in the moments where I just recently stumbled or just recently fallen short.
Yeah.
And so the conviction is, hey, you stepped out of God's design for you. You're invited to come back into intimacy and proximity to Christ. And those are the spaces where we actually like find healing and where we grow and where we mature. But it's so easy to just walk in condemnation and say, like, how could God love somebody like me? How could Jesus forgive me when I've stumbled in this area so many times? And those are lies from the adversary. I mean,
Yeah.
I ask myself, even within my own thinking process, like, does this sound like something that Jesus would say, or does it sound like something that Satan would say? And with Jesus, it's always an invitation to be drawn near. And with Satan, it's always sounds like, oh, you messed up this time. I don't know. That might have been the last strike. You might be disqualified now. And it's like, all right, does that resonate like the voice of Christ, or does that sound like my flesh or the adversary? And so embrace conviction. Like, understand that is an invitation. to be near to Christ.
Amen, man. That's so good. I would love to end there. We're out of time, but I think that's a great place to land. Yeah, I think the embrace conviction, that's huge. Like, if you're struggling with this, like, I think whatever's going on in your life, like, you've never been closer to God. You know, he's always there. Like, I think sometimes we mess up and we think that creates distance from God, and God is near to you. And every setback, I mean, you said it great. Like, I think every setback is an invitation, right, to learn, but also to grow closer to Him. So, man, thank you, Daniel, so much. Hope you guys were encouraged by this. And yeah, like, if you see Daniel around, you can't miss him. He's like 6'7". Yeah, 6'7".
Oh, don't say 6'7".
Sorry, bro. No. Yeah, so if you see him, say what's up. But yeah, thanks again, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
All right, y'all have a great week.